So today's guest is Stephanie Tousley, and she is a 42-year-old engineer turned nurse who has Lyme disease and chronic illness. She's been married for 13 years to a Turk that she met on a Buddhist chat room. She has two kids, aged 21 and 23, who also have Lyme disease, and they currently live at home and are unemployed at the moment. And Stephanie wanted to come on and talk about wanting more children and maybe some resentment and things that are coming up because she thought she was going to have more children, and then her husband decided that he didn't want to. So, why don't we talk to Stephanie about that? Welcome, Stephanie. It's really good to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here.
So, I'd love for you to tell me a little bit more about the background of what's been going on. At what point did your husband decide that he didn't want to have more children with you? And, what's been going on with that emotionally, physically? How has that played out?
So, when we first got married, I I lived in Turkey with him for the first year and a half. Um, and
That must have been culture shock.
It was heavenly. I love it. Um,
Awesome.
I wish we hadn't ever come back, to be honest with you. Um, it's a really amazing country, and it so we had a very whirlwind romance. We got married within 3 months of meeting each other, and literally, like, I had spent 2 weeks with him, went back 3 months later, and we got married within 2 weeks. So we were mostly because we were trying to expedite his visa to come to America, but that was before I had lived in Turkey, and so I stayed with him for a few months, and after we got married, and ended up getting a position with a good company, and was making great money. And so I was like, I think I might just stay. Um, and my parents took care of the boys for a few months. And so it was just the two of us for a few months. And he was like, yeah, I want to have a baby. And so, and I, I have a really, really deep seated need to hear that from my partner. The boy's dad, I got pregnant on accident at 18, and he honestly probably never really wanted kids, probably shouldn't have had kids, and so, and I have been obsessed with babies and small children my whole life, since literally I was born. I just was always the mothering type, and so it, like, I had friends that were 10 to 15 years older than me when I first had my kids, and I joined a mother's group, and they were just like, I can't believe that this is what makes you so happy. And I just remember them giving me like a lot of support for being 18, 19, and being so into mothering. They were like, I couldn't have handled a kid at 18, and blah blah blah. So it's just, I'm saying this just to show that it's like a lifelong need, for desire, for me uh to have a baby with a partner that I'm totally in love with, deeply committed to, and who also wants it. And so after a few months, I went and got my kids and brought them to Turkey. And after a few months of being married, and that's when everything changed for my husband, because my kids were 9 and 12, and that's right around the age that boys get really gross.
Yeah, they do.
And he loves them. There's no doubt about that. He is a good father to them. But, if we had gotten together when they were just a little bit younger, he probably would have been fine. But, they're just their own people by that age, and there's very little changing to them that you can do. And he, having been a bachelor for 30 years, was not used to the freaking mess that are two boys. And I am I'm just not I'm not a control freak, and I'm not a with my kids, and I tend to be probably a little bit to err on the side of permissiveness, and I I still expect them to. I mean, they were doing their own laundry by that age, and they were, you know, I- to me, I thought they were pretty awesome kids, but from his standpoint, it was it was culture shock for him, and and I think he was raised to like wake up, make his bed, fold his clothes, like he and I just wasn't that type of parent. And so uh he after a few months of being a parent, he was just like, "Ugh, no, I don't want a kid." And he's never come back from that. And I've had a couple near misses where I was like a few weeks late, and he seems excited in that moment. But then because I was ill or for whatever reason it didn't take, and and he, he would just kind of get a little bit more uh solid in his decision that no, we don't need to have more kids. And so I understand his standpoint. Kids are hard. He has self-diagnosed as having Peter Pan syndrome. So, he's very much, uh, you know, thinks that life is good as it is, and the sooner my kids can get well and be on their own, the better. And so he's really good at making me feel loved and cared for. But it's like, but your kids are another story, kind of thing. Like they're 21 and 23, although at his age, at 21 or 23, he was a bit of a mess. Like most guys take a long time to mature.
Right.
My kids with their illnesses are no different, and they're a little bit more handicapped in my opinion. So I just keep telling him that life will change. It never stays the same. They don't want to be here probably any more than I mean,
This too shall pass.
exactly. And not that I don't, of course, mind them being home, but I more mind that they are not active. And I'm going to work on that with them. Last winter, they worked up at the local ski resort, and they liked it a lot. And so I'm hoping that that's something that they can figure out a way to do again. So, but the fact that my husband has never, really been like, so at some point in our marriage, well, it was probably 9 years ago, actually, uh, he says, he starts, when we first came to America, he was like, I really want a British Bulldog. It's his dream dog. I don't know if you know anything about them, but they are like a permanent 2-year-old. They're not a normal dog.
Yeah.
They
My
they were
ex-husband had one of those when he moved in with his new partner and everything. And yeah, it was definitely a high needs animal.
yeah, they it's like they own you, not that you own them. And and so I had no idea. And instead of saying, okay, honey, we're thinking, I found these breeders and da 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 da. I'm at work one day and I get a text from him that he and my youngest son are driving to LA and going to pick up a bulldog. And I'm like, oh, I mean, like, I was speechless, and I had to speed read Cesar Millan's puppy book, because he actually deals with a specific English bulldog. And it was, and so I know he understands what it's like to have a deep seated need, and to, kind of be like, I'm willing to do anything for it, and even piss off my wife, and, kind of hijack the whole situation, and just to get what I want. And so I have, I have thought that over the years, that the fact that I never wavered, and so, yeah, I mean, maybe I have wavered a few times where I just was so sick where I was like, oh, I don't want, and, but that was for a short period of time that I was overwhelmingly sick, that I decided that I could live without having another kid. And so, but overall, it's never gone away. And I just thought at some point he would give, just because he loved me and saw that it just was not going anywhere. And because he didn't, I I have a lot of resentment. And because we could have had, if we had gotten pregnant in the beginning of our marriage, we would have already had a kid by the time I got sick. And it wouldn't have, and maybe I wouldn't have gotten sick at all. I don't know. Um, there's a lot of, my experience has been extremely spiritual as well. It's very much tied. My illness is definitely tied to me and my spiritual growth, and my path to enlightenment. And so I feel, I'm when I tap into my higher self, I feel convinced that having a child will be the difference for me, like make the difference in my health wise. And um and then when it comes to like the day in day out life, I tried to explain to him that I feel very strongly that I really, I want that life. Whatever that life that I mean, it's a very different life if you've got a small child versus having nothing. It's, and I'm sure a lot of women can identify with this, is that it gives you an extra level of purpose. And um, it's good to be, I am more comfortable, um, being needed. I, I, the whole time I put myself through school, I nannied. So I've raised about 10 different kids, and it's just my happy zone. And I'm really good at it. And, like, my kids slept through the night at, 2 to 4 weeks. And because there's a secret to it. And, you know, I didn't have the, 2-year-old that, or 3-year-old or 4-year-old that some people have that won't get out of their beds. Like, I do it right.
I'm sure that
And
our listeners would love to hear what the secret is to getting a 2 to 4 week old baby to sleep through the night.
okay, so this is a trade secret, but
Mm.
so what you do is, the minute they come home from the hospital, you never you never put them down after they've fallen asleep on you. So if that's something that they've just never experienced, So, like you breastfeed, change the diaper, breastfeed again, and then you make sure they're awake as you put them into their cot, or, what's that called? The little bedside
Crib.
crib.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they learn to fall asleep on their own from day one.
Mm.
And even if they're, so their circadian rhythms take a couple weeks to adjust. And so they might have like their days and nights mixed up, but you will never have to go through that crying 5-month-old that is like, doesn't know how to fall asleep unless they're, at the boob or on you. And it's horrible to have to do that to your kid, and to help them learn how to put themselves to sleep. And so if you just never give that to them as an option, and it's not like you're not really doing anything different besides waking them up if they fall asleep on the boob, or like some people, if it's wintertime, you can strip them, and so if they're cold, they sometimes won't fall asleep because they're just not all warm and cuddly and cozy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, like the easiest thing is just make sure they're awake as you are putting them down. And
Okay. Well, you heard it here first, folks. You'll have to give it a try. I'm not planning to have any more children myself, but I do have a client right now who has a 1-year-old who's still not falling asleep on his own, and it's causing a lot of issues in the marriage because there's so much battle between, should we let the baby cry it out, should we not let the baby cry it out, and yeah, to be able to take care of that within the first month or two of the baby being born would be amazing. So
yes,
yeah,
and
something to try.
there is another secret that I will share is that a baby can sleep 8 hours at 12 pounds.
Wow.
So you can adjust that however you want. If you want the kid to go to down at like 9 o'clock and you wake up at 4, then, or 5, then that you can adjust that timing however you like. But you can actually expect the child. And I had a lot of parents that were flabbergasted when I said that, and I was like, no, we can train them to sleep whenever you're ready. And it was actually a lot of times just the mom was not ready to
Mm-hmm.
have them sleep through the night.
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
people
especially, I
learn.
mean, it messes with people's beliefs and expectations too,
Right,
because
right,
so much experience and so many stories tell you that babies don't ever sleep through the night and they wake up every 2 or 3 hours. And
right.
so it can be hard for people to shift their perception of what's possible.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So those are
Okay.
my secret.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that somebody will benefit from hearing that, which is great. So, as far as what I would recommend to be able to deal with all of this on an emotional level and to make some level of peace with what is, and of course, I don't know how to convince your husband to give you what you want. I wish that I had the secrets to do that. And come to think of it, actually, if you want to kind of go on the moral down low, um, you can use PSTEC on other people. You can kind of do surrogate PSTEC for other people. I would suggest doing it on yourself plenty first to really get it down and understand it and work on your own stuff around certain issues. But just like you can do energy work on other people, sometimes it works to basically say to your brain and the universe right before you go into a round of the click track, I am doing this surrogately for my husband, or I am doing this surrogately for this child,
Mm.
or whatever. And you then kind of imagine stepping into them, feeling how they feel about a certain issue and letting them, through you, process all of those feelings and think all those negative thoughts and feel all those negative feelings. So I suppose you could pretend to be your husband, say, I am surrogately doing this round for my husband, and go through all of his fears and resistances to having another child, or whatever negative experiences or feelings he has about the experience he has had so far with children. So what's wonderful about doing that is it often takes down their issues around that issue a couple of notches, maybe not as much as if they did it themselves, but it also helps you get some sympathy for them, and it helps clear some of your stuff around that issue as well. So there's a lot that goes on when you do those surrogate rounds for people. Now, as far as the ethics of that, just like with energy work, it's always good to ask the person, can I do this for you? And if you believe that through their ego, they will say no, you can ask their higher self. But whatever answer
Yes.
you get from their higher self, you need to respect that.
Okay.
And if their higher self says that is not for the highest good, we are not open to you meddling with us in this way, then you have to respect that and move on. So really that's up to you. That's, a suggestion that you can take with a grain of salt and do with what you will.
So speaking of ethics, after I wrote to you and said that this was the topic that was nearest and dearest to my heart that I felt like I needed help with, I've done something, and I stole my husband's sperm, and I I don't feel bad. I don't feel very guilty. I feel a little guilty, but not too much. And I I I actually kind of feel like empowered and like took the bull by the horns. And especially when I think about the bulldog, that I think
It's
turnaround's fair
your
play.
version of the bulldog. Mm-hmm.
Not that it's right. Um, and I guess, I mean, anybody can justify anything, of course. Um, and I don't want anyone to think that I would say, "Oh yeah, that's no problem if you do something like this." But, um, but I, I guess I felt really desperate. Like, okay, I'm about to be 43, and it's kind of like now or never. And I guess I could have waited to talk to you about it. Um, that would have been wise. Uh, but yeah, I, I, I just, I just kind of snapped and was like, um, I will never tell him, and hopefully nobody else will. And but I wanted to be honest with you because um, I'm 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 actually wondering if like because like from a ethical moral standard, does PSTEC still work? Will it, like, have I angered the gods kind of thing?
No, that's the the way that PSTEC works is really, even though it does work on an energetic level, almost accidentally, what it affects is your brain and your mind's perception of reality. And so
Right. Okay.
it helps you to find peace with whatever it is that's bothering you. And that really, first and foremost, is occurring on just the brain level. But
Okay.
what I find is that once you get that clearance on the subconscious level of the mind, it filters into all the other areas as well. Like it tends to give you some physical peace. It tends to give you some energetic peace. It tends to give you some spiritual peace. I've seen chakra blockages clear by working on issues. Like if somebody has difficulty speaking up for themselves and they work on whatever blocks they have mentally and
Oh,
emotionally to speaking their truth, the throat chakra blockage can clear as a product of being able to take care of those mental emotional fears and blocks and traumas around self-expression.
it's
So
wonderful.
it's amazing, it wasn't intended to be energy work, but somehow it kind of is at the same time. But
I think that,
basically,
sorry.
it doesn't matter like what perceived crimes you've committed. What matters more with this work is whether you now believe you don't deserve to
Mm,
feel better or to get peace or to get what you want because of this. If you have that belief, that could block some of the progress, but otherwise, it's, like to me, our guides usually don't really judge us that much by our actions and things of that nature. So they're not going to, get in the way of progress and what you need to do. And I don't really judge what anybody is up to either, as long as they're not harming other people. Um, so, I think where I would go with, to me, what needs to be healed and what needs to be dealt with all of this is I would use the click track to feel your resentment and anger toward your husband. So you can go about this a couple of different ways. You can either picture him in front of you while you play the click track and just tell him off and be like, what the hell? You promised this to me. You said yes. And then suddenly you're saying no. And this is something that means so much to me. And how dare you? And just, and you've ruined my chance for happiness. You've taken something so deep and powerful away from me, and just kind of go at him like that. If you want to, you can do it about everything he does or says that bothers you, or whatever he doesn't do, whatever he doesn't do for you that you wish that he would. Um, I mean, you can just really picture letting him have it and tell him off for everything that bothers you about him, or it can
mhm,
just be specific to this, you've taken this ability from me to have another child, which is something I desperately want and need. Um, the other way you can go about that is to complain to the universe about him while you play the click track. So it's really
mm,
whatever you
mhm,
feel more comfortable
mhm.
with. So whatever you feel like you're going to be able to better dive into those emotions and that those thoughts and feelings and all of that. So some people feel intimidated by the idea of confronting the person. So they will, do the talk to the
Yeah,
universe instead about them. But some people feel like they can get way more into it if they picture the person in front of them and just go off on them face to face. Of course, this is all done silently in your brain. This isn't actually like do this to your husband. This is
of
imagine
course.
doing this to your
Yes.
husband. Um, Going as many rounds as it takes to really get that feeling down to nothing. So if you're rating on a scale of 0 to 10, you're probably going to start around an 8 or a 9. And,
Right.
I want you to do as many rounds as you need to. And that doesn't have to be all at once. It doesn't have to be like do 5 rounds in one sitting. It can be do 2 or 3 rounds in one sitting and then take a break, check in with yourself, and then decide later, like, what is my emotional intensity around this now? And if there's anything left, do another round or two to get it gone. But for some people, 1 or 2 rounds clears things regardless of how big they are. So just kind of pay attention to that. Now, I also want to back up and say that this doesn't clear your opinion on the matter. So your opinion or your thoughts about the whole thing may be still very similar. It's just that that emotional charge that comes up, that fight or flight
Reaction.
response, that emotional and chemical reaction that you have in your body when that resentment is coming up, or when that feeling of, geez, I wish that we would have had a kid, I wish that he would say yes, those kinds of thoughts and feelings, the emotional and chemical response to that will have zeroed out.
Got it.
So that's the first set of things I would do. I would also use the click track to just be sad about not having another child, and just kind of mourn the loss of that. Be like, this is something I've always wanted and I need it so badly. And how can anyone keep this from me? And why, universe, why can't I have this? I need it. Just doing that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Now, to take all of that deeper, what I'd really like to look at, and I did make some notes while you were talking too, about what this really means to you on a deeper level. Because typically, whenever we want anything, it's more about the emotional payoff of getting that thing and what we think it will do for us, what we think that it will make us feel on an emotional level, than it is about having the actual thing.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
what would having more children make you feel about yourself or about your life?
So I think so I'm extremely empathic, and I have I have a 10-step gift. So my gift works that I see 10 steps past any possible decision. So I see what our life would look like without kids. I see what it would look with a child. And the life with the child has like many aspects to it that um we are planning on moving back to Turkey soon, like
Wonderful.
within 5 years. Most of our friends are having kids, and all, like, we have, he has all of his childhood friends, and then the friends that I made when I worked there, they're all having kids right now. And so, you know, the lifestyle that um we would have is what I really want. There's the fact that his his sister is 40 and has no prospects of getting married or anything like that. So it looks like they're not going to have grandchildren. Um, and um, the fact that I think how it would affect him as a person, um, yeah, he would, I think most new fathers have a ton of fears. Um, but I can see on the other side of what it would look like, and the the joy that it brings to your life, the how having kids really does keep you young.
Mm.
And um there's and then for me personally, emotionally, like I said, that that feeling of being needed, of having, like, when you don't have kids, you can stay in bed till noon, and that's not necessarily a good thing. And especially for me, since I'm not able to work at this point, um, you know, I, I want to be needed. I want to, uh, I want, and I feel like I was in a really horrible relationship when my kids were little, and I feel like I, I missed some piece of, like, that super duper tight bond and connection. I feel like I was a little bit emotionally unavailable to my kids because I was so caught up in this I was with a narcissist, and um, and I kind of want to make up for that. And having a kid at 42, 43 means they're only 20 at 63. Like that's another, like I could have grandkids with my from my sons and have, like I just love all the potential possibilities. And is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, yeah. And something else that I was looking at too, there's a sense that having a child, like you said, would keep you young, may also help you to improve your own health and everything too. Like it would be healing for you on some level to have a child or children to take care of. Uh, and I mean, I would wonder, if you have Lyme, if you have any other disabilities, things like that going on. Um, a lot of times those come from emotional baggage throughout the years, and unhealed traumas and difficulties, from our youth, and things that have never been resolved,
Exactly.
creating the physical issues. And so a lot of times finding some emotional fulfillment somewhere and some purpose somewhere can help kind of get you out of that place, almost forcing you out of that place.
Exactly.
And yeah, and it's funny because my wife and I are always talking about, we know, like, I have people in our outer circle that have disabilities or are really emotionally tortured, and they're on disability, so they're basically now just at home all the time, focused on the neurotic thoughts, focused on the pain and the disability, and all of that. And it just is this cycle
Yep.
that tends to perpetuate itself. Like, okay, I'm emotionally or physically miserable, but all I have time to do is focus on how emotionally and physically miserable I am.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's almost like getting out of your own head.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like
Right.
it, it, yes, having a new baby is exhausting. It's, but it's fulfilling on,
Hmm.
like, and I guess if I had never been a mom, then I wouldn't know that. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
but because I know what it is, and it's a it's a super comfortable known. I don't I just feel like
Yeah.
the I think also, because I turned my parents into grandparents at a very young age. My mom was like 42 when she became a grandma. So I feel like if we had another baby now, that my parents would be able to experience kind of that real grandparenthood, where it's like take the baby for a few hours and then check it back to the mom. Because when the boys were
Instead of
little,
having to be
I
another set of parents to the children.
exactly, I was going to
Right.
school so much and all that stuff. So yeah, exactly.
Hmm. Okay. All right. So, some of that I would probably put in with the same round that I already recommended about lamenting the fact that you don't have more children, and all of that. So, kind of throwing in some of those things of like, but I want
Hmm.
to give that experience to my parents, and it would really get me out of my own way, and going into all of those things, as well as just the need and all of that. But I really feel like a big piece of this, there's two themes, I think. And I don't know anything about your childhood, but typically, if we have certain patterns in our adulthood, it kind of points right back to certain experiences that we had as children or babies or whatever ourselves. So a couple of things. One is the kind of moving into that lifestyle, fitting in with your friends who are also having children and things like that. When you were a child, did you feel like you fit in with other kids or with your own family?
Never.
Okay.
I've
So,
always felt like an alien on Earth.
okay. So that is huge, 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 huge. Something that we absolutely need to address with the click track.
Okay.
Um, and usually these big emotional pain things, these big longings, really point to things that never got resolved when we were kids. So,
Yes, I totally
um,
agree.
and I mean, I had to do a round of the click track on just being angry at my guides and my divine team for abandoning me here on this earth without a user manual, and with people who just had a lack mentality and a fear mentality and just didn't
Oh God,
didn't have it
yes.
all together. And I was just like, how dare you leave me here and not know what I'm doing and have me figure it all out by myself, and so I used the click track to do that, to kind of disperse a lot of that. So I think that doing something along those lines yourself would be really beneficial, of this feeling of, I never feel like I fit in. And maybe the pain is most intense right now with this possibility of, like, all of our friends are having children and I'm not having children right now. So there's a place where I'm not fitting in.
Mm,
Um, and then going into, as a kid, I didn't feel like I fit in school. Growing, like when I was really little, I didn't really feel like I always fit in with what my parents wanted, or, like, fit in with my family. And I've always felt like I just didn't belong here. So it's just kind of doing a round where you're acknowledging all of that. Basically, the theme throughout your life of feeling like you don't fit in or you don't belong. And mourning that, like, and if you don't have a lot of pain around the early parts of it, you take the more recent pain and apply that to it. So you're basically taking wherever the pain is most intense, trying to keep that throughout the entire track, while you just kind of acknowledge the timeline of all of the times where that has been the case. And I can see you have tears in your eyes right now. That's a really big wound for you. Yeah.
yes.
And I think it is for a lot of empaths. There's just this, I see so many people all the time who just feel like they don't belong here. Like, what the hell am I doing here on this planet with all of this ugliness? And
Oh my
yeah,
God.
yeah.
Especially now. I I uh, I have struggled with suicide all my life too, because like you said, never I've never I also, I think I was born with some kind of condition where I feel pain. Like normal people, they if you touch them, it takes a very hard touch before they feel pain. I feel pain like about a centimeter or two once you start touching. And I my like brushing my hair, I would scream. Like the neighbors called the cops because they thought I was dying. Um, and just never feeling, you know, comfortable, or just basically I've always had this level of pain my whole life. And it's like it 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 zaps you of any desire to actually live, because the only way that I can get comfortable is on some serious opiates.
Hmm.
And I know it's genetic because I literally, like, I was born with it, and I had colic at like 6 weeks, and my mom didn't know what the hell to do with me, and I I've gone back and I've tried to heal all of that. Like I sensed her extreme frustration and feeling of failure of being a mom and all that stuff, because that's like passed to you in the breast milk. If that's what's
Mhm.
going on with your mom, you're going to get it. So yeah, and then once I was in school, I was a freak because I needed 2 seconds to understand stuff that it took other kids half an hour. And so they would always ship me off down to the lower grades, and I was teaching like 10 first graders how to read, or I was, um, you know, and I asked my parents, I'm like, did you never consider, taking me to like a more advanced school and just having me tested to see if they would give me a scholarship or something? My mom's like, they didn't suggest it, and I didn't really know. And um, there's a really excellent school near us that
Mm.
that takes in gifted kids, and I just wonder if I'd been more challenged, and because everything came so easy to me, once it did get hard, I didn't know what the hell to do with myself. And um, it, I mean, I basically stopped in high school being, you know, a, a good student because as soon as I started to not understand something, I couldn't handle that. And because everything had come so easily to me before. And it was an odd thing, actually, that it took me about 3 years, or maybe okay, I was like 17, so 4 years. And I went back to school. And by that time, my brain had developed enough that everything went back to being easy. And so that's when I became an engineer. And, and most engineers don't consider school easy.
Mhm.
And so I guess, from that standpoint, sorry, um, I just, I've never been able to decide if am I a am I a good person because things come easy to me, or am I a lazy ass because when things are hard, I I tend to I just don't always know what to do. And it's like I need to decide for myself that I'm a worthwhile investment of my own time.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does?
Yep.
Okay,
Mhm.
good.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a really common thing for people to deal with is like, do I deserve this? Do I deserve to feel good? Do I deserve to have a good life, to be healthy, to, you know, whatever, like anything positive. People just feeling like they're not worthy of it, or they don't deserve it, or they haven't worked hard enough for it, or um, and also just, are they worthy of all of this work that needs to be done in order to even get there?
Right. Right. Because it's
So I
so
just,
overwhelming when you
right.
are looking like, oh my God, I've got all that work to do still. Or
Yeah.
when old stuff pops back up that you thought you had dealt with. It's like,
Yeah.
oh my
Well,
God,
I mean,
again?
that's really why I got into doing the PS Tech, because I found that everything else you had to do it over and over and over and over again. It was like you were just working on a layer of it, and then
Right.
there it was back again. And it just got really frustrating of how many layers of this thing do I need to peel back? It's how long do I need to deal with this? Like, okay, I can feel better about it for a month, but as soon as something triggers it again, there it is all over again, just as bad as it was before, or maybe slightly less bad, but still pretty bad. And it's exhausting having to
Right.
peel back layer after layer. I mean, it's hard enough with the PS Tech knowing like, okay, here are all of the crappy things that have happened in my life, and I need to address each one of those in order to find freedom. Like, that's enough to be like, that's a lot of work. But when you look at all of the other modalities and everything that I was trying up until then, and the fact that all of those things should have still been addressed, but each one would have had to have been addressed like 10 or 15 different times before it cleared. That's insane.
Right.
Like, people be, like having to work hardcore on things for years and years and years and years and years. So that's what's really amazing to me about this work in particular, is you do a couple of rounds, 10, 20, 30 minutes on one issue, and it's gone. I mean, that's
Yeah,
astonishing. So,
it is.
it's just a matter of really getting it at the root,
Hmm.
and also getting each individual emotion that is attached to a particular thing. Like those are really the tricks to getting something completely gone. And that's really the only layer work that you have to do, is making sure that if you have guilt or shame, anger, and sadness around a particular moment or situation, that you need to do a round on each of those individual emotions to get that gone. But
Okay.
that's what you need to do to work through those layers. And also make sure that when you're doing that, you are looking at your whole timeline, your whole theme of feeling that way and reacting to that kind of situation throughout the course of your life, as opposed to just that one single situation. But that helps you clear it much more quickly and permanently, because you're addressing things in groups, because you're looking at a whole
Oh, right.
theme of something occurring through your life, instead of just, here's this isolated incident where I feel this way. You're able to address at the same time all of the individual incidences that are related to that thing. And the earlier ones are the reason why you're still reacting to this one so strongly in the present. So being able to address all of those in a group together gets you permanent clearing, because you're digging it up at its root, and you're clearing it in all of the examples that you can think of where you felt that way. And so
Right.
your brain is getting release in each of those individual situations related to that problem, so that you can just kind of move on from it and not have so much pain around it.
I had a question. Is did was PSTEC created, or I don't know if that's the right word, but in order to help like PTSD?
Yes. Yeah, it
Okay.
was it was
Okay.
originally designed for PTSD and phobias.
Oh, okay.
And basically, the creator, Tim Fazzackerly, wanted people to have the capability to take care of any trauma or phobia, even if they couldn't afford therapy, or just because even regular talk therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy don't necessarily get rid of the trauma response,
Exactly.
or the fear response to something. So this is a way to be able to do that, whether under the observation and guidance of a coach or a practitioner, or on your own at home. He just wanted anybody and everybody to have access to the
Awesome.
tools to do that. So yeah, that's what it's for. And it's great, because that means you can clear the biggest stuff in your life with it, but you can also clear the stupid little piddly things that bother you day to day with it too. So
Hmm. Yeah.
I like to use it on, if something bothers me, and especially if it just keeps popping into my head throughout the day, I clear it. I'm like, I am not going to sit with this as a trigger. I don't want this to bother me if it happens again in a week or a month or a year. I just want to be free from this trigger. So I examine what button it's really pushing. I use the click track to freak out about it bothering me right now and all the times I've had something similar, and then it's gone and I'm just done with it. So that's really the name of the game. Now, it looks like you have a question. Go ahead.
Have you noticed that when you clear something within you, that it can often release, um, or alter your relationship with the person that maybe you had some grudge or resentments or issues with? Because I've heard that a lot of times by you changing, then you bring about change in others.
Undoubtedly. Absolutely. That, my big example is that I always wanted the honeymoon phase to go on, and I followed my wife around trying to get her to turn back into that, person that I fell in love with and all that. And then did tons and tons of work on myself. But finally, when I did this PSTEC work on myself and figured out that what I was really looking for was for her to prove that she wanted me.
Yes. Oh God. Yeah.
Yeah. So once I cleared that, because I had done a lot of other work, like I had even done some work on my frustration about the situation or my pain of feeling rejected and all of that. And it would help for a while, but it wasn't like getting it at the root, even with the PS Tech, because I didn't know what the root was.
Right.
But
Right.
once I finally figured out what the root was and realized that all it was about being wanted, which incidentally for listeners, I figured that out using the Crack the Longing Code process, which you can find the information for how to get that in the notes for the show. So anybody who wants to play along and do this process on themselves, it helps you dig up whatever your biggest wound is and be able to clear it so that, you know, your whatever you long for, whatever emptiness you feel can actually be taken care of so that you're not carrying that around and putting that into all of your relationships and interactions in life. So, okay. So back to what I did, I figured out it was about being wanted. And I then said to myself, okay, when was the first time I was unwanted? Did my parents want me? And it went back to, I had been an unwanted pregnancy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And you know, and also my parents divorced when I was one, so I probably at that time, at that age, thought that maybe that meant my dad didn't want me. So there was a lot of those kinds of things, and even though I was loved and nurtured and welcomed and all of that, I still had that programming throughout the course of my life that I was unwanted. And so I kind of went through life constantly wanting everyone to prove they wanted me all the time. And the honeymoon phase is really when you feel that way the most, so that's where it was the
Absolutely.
most intense for me. And then I cleared that. I basically used the click track to feel the more recent rejections or perceived rejections, because she wasn't actually rejecting me, but I was perceiving that she was.
Hmm.
So I brought that pain up and I applied that pain to that whole timeline of like unwanted pregnancy, parents divorcing when I was one, times my mom couldn't pay attention to me when I was little, times I tried to flirt with little boys when I was a kid and didn't, you know, they didn't want to do that, so they didn't want me. And then all the honeymoon phases ending, them not wanting me. And I just kind of had a fit about all of that. Did maybe 2 rounds of the click track on that. And then it just disappeared. Like that longing, that pain, the negative loop of thoughts of like, why isn't she proving she wants me right now? It just disappeared. And that energy changing in me changed our interaction so dramatically. It was incredible how much more playful we were able to be together, how much more relaxed we could be, how much more open I was to her, and therefore she was able to be more open with me. And so we actually got closer to how we used to be, um, because we were able to just relax and be together without all these expectations, without all the longing, without all the pain and the resentment and the blame and all of that under the surface. So it
Oh
really
God.
does. When you change your own energy and expectations and pain around something, it opens up a whole new realm in that relationship and your interactions with that person, because you're no longer energetically putting pressure on them to be a certain way
Yes.
or do a certain thing or whatever. So
Exactly.
that's really the name of the game here. Now, I think
That's such a
that the
point.
biggest piece for you, I mean, I think the fitting in and belonging round is going to be really powerful, but there's a bigger one, and it's the need to be needed, which may also be interrelated to not being wanted, but I'm not sure about that. I'm wondering, childhood wise, what the connection is there with needing to be needed.
Mm.
Did you feel like you had to parent your parents or your siblings when you were little?
Yes. Um, so I don't know why I thought this. Well, I mean, okay, I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to judge what's going to come out of my mouth. I'll just say it. Um, so like I said, I was extremely precocious and very, And I think I knew, because I have this ability now, that when somebody lies, I have a physical reaction. And so if you're a small child and you know when somebody's lying to you, and then you realize, well, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. And so I've got to be the, well, wait, maybe you should consider this possibility or that possibility. And and so on some level, I came to believe that I was smarter than my parents. And and so I guess I never, oh wow. I can't believe how deep this is going. So like the decisions that they would make financially wouldn't didn't what proved to be unwise. And so it put us in this really crappy zone of financial instability. And where it was like and a complete wholehearted belief in lack. And um and I feel like I've had to, oh god, I've had to like overcome so many, like on top of that, then that created this victimhood feeling for me, where I felt like I was always at other people's mercy. And like their decisions had such a huge impact on my life. And 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 so um and it kind of perpetuated itself as well. And so then, you know uh
And that is part, that sense of powerlessness is part of what's happening right now with your husband deciding not to have kids too. And that would be a great theme for you to work on, is just like have a fit about every time in your life where you have felt powerless. And that goes way young, way young.
no, I agree. um I I don't know exactly where the needing to be needed comes from. I was beaten as a child. Um, I grew up Jehovah's Witness, and that'll screw you up real quick. And uh,
Okay. So a big part of that, I believe, is women being of service and
yes,
having lots of children and serving her family. And that can get ingrained in very young, that this is your purpose, this is what you're here to do. And so,
it's possible.
the programming of the church is pivotal for a lot of people if you're exposed to it heavily at a really young age. So it sounds like probably in that atmosphere you were. And
I
I
was.
think that that would be a big part of this. So for you doing, um, even if you don't have strong feelings that that is what all women should be doing, or on a conscious level, I'm sure you understand that that is not all women's purpose and all of
Right.
that. But on a subconscious level, for you especially, like you have taken that in as your purpose and your
I
meaning.
definitely, so I actually had this argument with the narcissist ex-boyfriend,
Hmm.
because he was like, why do you want more kids? And blah blah blah. And I I think like innermost piece for me is that the person I'm with thinks highly enough of me, respects me, and trusts me to
Mm,
provide for our child and our life. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes. So
I've even,
that's it. That's that's the key. That's the huge piece there. And you have not anywhere in your life had anyone who treated you that way.
Mhm.
And that's been the need that's been missing for you all along. Somebody who absolutely trusts you, loves you, respects you, sees you as fully capable.
Right.
So really, in essence, like the big one I think is trusts you on the bigger sense. Not just trust you not to cheat or trust you to take care of the household, but trusts you to be able to take care of all of the bigger things. And
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So I would use the click track to feel the pain of your husband not trusting you enough to have another child with him. That while he loves and respects you, that clearly he feels that you aren't enough to do this with, that for
Mm.
whatever reason, he can't trust that you would be capable and able to do this. And then go through your whole history of everybody. And it's almost a sense of dismissiveness or not seeing your capabilities, not seeing how much you are truly capable of and how good you really are. And I mean, that it goes all over the place. It goes in the school example where you were really gifted and that wasn't recognized. In fact, it was, you got the opposite. Um, and I'm sure even younger, that feeling when your parents need more guidance than you do, but it's not being recognized. You offering some intelligent guidance to them and them not taking that in. And I'm sure you can come up with so many examples. The relationship with your ex, um, all kinds of things. So yeah, I think that need not being met for you throughout the course of your life is the bigger piece of the wound of you not having more children, is that it's the lack of trust in your capabilities and the absolute knowledge that you've got this.
Yeah.
So people treating you like that you don't have it or you can't handle it, or yeah. So I don't even know what to call that theme. Um, they can't trust you, that they don't see your capabilities, something like that. So it's basically that theme of that throughout your life would be a really
Maybe
big one.
it's not being seen.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 Not, yeah, sure. That's, that really covers the whole, all of those elements. Not feeling truly seen. Okay. So I would say that's probably the biggest one. Um, I think the fitting in is pretty big up there too, but I would say the not feeling seen would be the biggie. Do you have time, and are you up for doing a round or two here with me to do
Sure.
some work on that? Okay.
Yeah.
So what we will be doing is do a round of the click track, and you had a little bit of time to practice with it
Yes.
yourself. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
you're a little familiar with it. Basically, it's what you need to be thinking about is that theme of your life of people not really seeing you, not not truly seeing you, your capabilities, trusting you to see things through and thrive and do things right and all of that. So um, starting with wherever that's most intense emotionally and feeling that feeling throughout the track while also acknowledging as many examples throughout your life as you possibly can, going back as early as you can possibly assume that it happened, even if you think there was something around that in infancy or toddlerhood. Um, and like you said, your mom was not so great either at that phase. And so if you can also include maybe your mom feeling that way, because it's possible that some of that is hers that you've been carrying too. So, just a brief acknowledgement of that. You don't have to deep dive into it, but just even the brief acknowledgement that that is likely the case can be really beneficial too. So, really, it's just kind of jumping all over the timeline of whatever feels associated with this theme for you and
Okay.
just kind of wallowing in that feeling of not really truly being seen. Okay. We will be right back after we've done a round or two of this. Okay, so we are back, and we just did round one on that sense of not feeling like people really truly saw you, saw your capabilities, saw how good you were. So at its most intense, what number would you say that got to intensity wise while you were doing that?
I think a 9.
Okay. And if you think about it now, and because the biggest place where that's showing up is with your husband not wanting to have more kids and all of that with you, um, if you think about that now, and if you think about that being because he doesn't really trust or fully see you, what number would you say that comes to now with your emotional reaction to that?
I think like a 5.
Good. That's great. So you brought it down by about half. And I would probably say, why don't we do one more round on that to take it down as far as we possibly can right now?
Shush.
There's a dog growling in the background. Okay, so are you up for one more round of that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. We will be right back. And we are back now from round two. And if you think about that now, what number would you say that you're feeling when you try to bring that feeling up? Just that theme throughout your life, people just not seeing you, not trusting you, not seeing your capabilities. What number would you get?
Like a 1.
Perfect. That's it. All right. So, really, with this, you can expect to have that no longer be a trigger for you. You still won't like it, you won't appreciate it, but first of all, you may attract less of it. You will likely perceive far less of it. And while you'll still think it's a negative, you won't have that fight or flight response to it. You won't be heartbroken by it. And it won't feel like this gaping wound whenever it comes up. So What did you experience with that as far as like when you started to notice it fading and disappearing? Was there, anything that surprised you while you were going through that?
Well, yeah, because at the end of the first time we did it, I started to realize that my victimhood was also wrapped up in this, and that um, I, because I I saw my I saw my I saw my responsibility in it, um, and I I like, so part of being a victim is that you have to have somebody to blame, and so I realized that I if I stopped blaming people for doing me wrong, or uh, putting me in positions that compromised me, and just you know kind of took a step back and said, well, I I I could have done something differently as well. And and so, because I really hate blame, um but I didn't see that it was me blaming others creating that victimhood. And um and so you and that whole powerlessness thing that you brought up,
Hmm.
um and so I kind of realized that by stealing, I was trying to take back my power, and and so I kind of started thinking that I by blaming, I was giving the power away,
Absolutely.
and so I could reclaim my power, stop feeling powerless and this victimhood thing. And because I have the victimhood around being sick, I have it around the way that my husband or exes have treated me, and or even how my parents raised me. So when you stop all that blame and say, okay, I can't really do anything about the past, but I can use this method to heal it, and then I can behave differently in the future.
Indeed. And that is a priceless realization. That's amazing to have that understanding, be able to have, and that's taking your power back right there. Recognizing that, you can make different choices in your life if you want to, and you can heal whatever pain you have around anything.
Yeah. Thank you. I It's awesome.
Awesome. It warms my heart.
Mine too.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So while you were doing that, I was creating a list that I want to send to you, specifically to continue this work at home, because I would love to meet up with you again in maybe a week or two and see where
Oh,
you're at with this. Like, see
okay.
if you've noticed anything shifting in your life, or even just in your emotional world around this. Even if you notice, what if something shifts in your relationship, or those kinds of
Hmm.
things. So I'd love
Great.
to do maybe, a quick visit with you in a week or two, just to check in on that kind of stuff. But I want to quickly go over like what I'm going to be sending you to possibly work through. And this is just specific to, the particular topic that we've been talking about today. So doing a round on Well, actually, let me pull it up on my phone because I made it a little bit more clear on my phone than I did in my messy notes over here. So, doing a round on the theme of feeling powerless throughout your life. So, you would start with the not being able to have a baby, not being able to get your husband to, get on board with that, and then going through everywhere in your life throughout that has felt, powerless. And that goes back way young. That's a big one for everybody, honestly. We as kids tend to feel powerless a lot in general. And then if you're in an abusive situation, even more so. So that's
Yeah.
really important to acknowledge and to be able to feel those wounds and let that inner child version of you feel her feelings about that and notice that that's what's coming up for you when you feel powerless in your current romantic relationship. So doing that, and then the theme of not, if you need to, if there's anything left, which there shouldn't be, but if any little bit comes up about this, that theme again of not feeling fully feeling truly seen, trusted, all of that throughout your life. The theme of not fitting in or belonging throughout your life, doing an angry fit at your husband, doing an angry fit at each of the individual major players in your life. So an angry fit at mom, an angry fit at dad. I mean, that's hugely therapeutic to do that kind of stuff. Anybody else that you feel like has played a major part in harming you in any way, or anyone you're holding any kind of resentment toward. An angry fit about nobody advocating for you to get a better education.
Yeah, that's a big one. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. An angry fit at yourself. Yeah, everybody beats themselves up for things, and so you can basically use this to tell yourself off. And then also, I just added the feeling like a victim, so you can do a round where you just kind of go over like what a victim you've been, and not. I don't mean I'm not calling you a victim. I just mean that everybody in your life who has victimized you and made you feel like a victim, you can basically lament that, like this pattern of all of these things being done to you, and how you just kind of felt like everyone was against you or everyone was out to hurt you, and all of that, and just kind of go through all of that. So let yourself feel like a victim for a round or two
Okay.
so that you can actually let go of that victimhood.
Okay.
And then just, an extra bonus, you mentioned that you have physical pain. You can use the click track on physical pain, especially if it's being medically treated and recognized and all of that, because you have to be kind of careful using it on physical pain, just because sometimes physical pain is a signal of something else. So, I
Right.
don't recommend using it across the board for every pain that ever comes up. But if you've already been to a doctor about it and it's being addressed and whatever, then you can use the click track to feel the physical pain, and it can help take that pain down.
Oh my God.
It's kind of crazy. So, I would start with the emotional stuff just to get more practice on it, get your brain used to using this, and then start to use it on the physical stuff.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
Mm. Yeah, it's basically, if you can convince your subconscious mind you're okay, then you're okay. And that's really what this is all about. So we're just
Mm.
we're just taking each little individual thing and getting your subconscious to believe you're safe or you're okay in that particular situation or theme. And once your subconscious is there, it actually becomes your reality. So,
Wow.
yes,
Awesome.
yes. All right. So we will revisit in a week or two and, update everybody on how you're doing then. But thank you so much for coming on. It's really been a pleasure. It's been awesome doing this with you.
Could I ask you one more question?
Of course.
Um, just have you ever noticed that you feel like really tired after?
Everybody reacts a little bit differently to this. Some people feel kind of sleepy afterwards. Some people feel completely exhausted afterward. Some people feel energized by it. I often have felt like I can feel somebody rewiring the wires in my brain.
Oh,
So I actually get like a physical sensation, almost like somebody's moving something around up there in my brain. Some people react to it like energy work, so it's a little different for everybody, and it also depends on how huge the thing is that you were just working on. And I mean, if you really think about this has been a lifelong theme for you, it makes sense that you might feel kind of exhausted after doing, after really diving into feelings that we try to avoid as much as we possibly can.
Right.
Even though they're being healed and kind of disconnected for you, you're still kind of diving into something that is heavy. So, I can understand why you might feel a little bit exhausted afterward. And if
Okay.
if you've got 20 minutes to take a nap afterward, feel free to do that.
Okay.
And just a rule of thumb, I usually tell people try to just do like 3 rounds to a sitting at most,
Okay.
and then take a break, do some other things, do something that's relaxing or fun for you to kind of re-up your chemicals and everything so that you're not swimming in stress chemicals all day. And then later on, you can check in and see what else you want to work on or whatever. But just, don't spend hours in a row doing this work. It's, as you can see, it's too much. It's too much to do that. But if you do, I'm happy if you do 1 to 3 rounds a day. But
Okay.
if you do 1 to 3 rounds in the morning, 1 to 3 rounds in the evening, that's great too. So whatever you can fit in, whatever feels right to you as far as how much you're doing. Just don't don't do hours and hours in a row of it. It's it's a little much to be doing that kind of thing with.
Yeah. Got it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on, and we will catch up soon.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you.